So it's wonderful to be back with all of you. Had a lot of relaxation, got a lot of sleep. Chased David around. He had a wonderful vacation. And I thought often of each of you while I was gone, and all of your Dharma brothers and sisters. I heard you got some visits from Dharma aunts. That's great. And Dharma grandma was here too. So lots of family was able to step in. Thanks for Genpo for giving the talk. And thanks for Hozo for keeping the ship righted and making sure Zoom was on all the time. So I have such a difficult time sometimes. There's so much wonder, there's so much beauty in this practice. But, you know, the moment you try to communicate it, you struggle. And so there's this great leap that has to happen from realization to actualization. But using words to try to gesture people into that gap can be a challenge, yeah? It can be very hard because we desperately want to retreat back into the idealized notion of self, notion of practice, or maybe even enlightenment. And that's often what gets us stuck. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about that while I was off on vacation. And what kept coming to the mind was case 23 of the Hekigan-roku. It's known as Hofuku Summit of Mystic Peak. And the case is, once Hofuku and Chōkei were wandering in the mountains, and Hofuku pointed with his hand and said, "Hey, right here is the summit of Mystic Peak. Right here." Chōkei looked at him and said, "So it is. What a pity." Secho added a word to the case saying, "Today, what is the purpose of traveling the mountains together with these fellows?" He also said, "Hundreds of thousands of years hence, I don't say there are none, just that they will be few." Later, this dialogue between Hofuku and Chōkei was quoted to Chōkei. So they came back and told about it. Chōkei said, "If it hadn't been for Mr. Sun, or Secho, then you would have seen skulls covering the fields." It's an interesting case. A way of drawing us in deeper and moving past some notion of practice or notion of enlightenment towards actualization. So some of these characters are shaded by the vast cloak of time. We know something of Chōkei. He lived during the Tang to early 5 Dynasties period. So we're talking about the late 9th to the early 10th century in China. He's a Dharma heir of Isan Ryu, someone we'll see often in the Zen annals. You'll all remember him as the one kicking over a water jug in the 40th case of the Mumonkan. And Isan is a foundational figure in the Igyo school of Zen, which blends sharp inquiry, direct pointing, with poetic metaphor, and often a little bit of subtle humor, as was certainly captured in that case. So his Dharma heir, Chōkei, based on Isan's wonderful, subtle way of teachings, becomes himself very subtle and adds an element of using poetry and natural imagery or ironic expression to provoke realization, to provoke looking past the words and the intellect to hit the true heart of the matter. And of course, he was known as someone who emphasized non-attachment to form, non-attachment to understanding, non-attachment even to the tradition itself. We often heard the adage that Zen is like a finger that's pointing to the moon. Just don't mistake your finger for the moon. Right? So his style is always compassionate, but it's also sharp and cutting. And he's attempting here to disrupt conceptual clinging by using just a few words to turn the bull. And he's walking with Hofuku. He's a contemporary and perhaps a peer. We don't know too much about him. We do know that he was a Dharma. His later title was Osho, so he was a Dharma, transmitted Dharma teacher as well later. but they both show deep insight into the ability to disrupt conceptual clinging. So, Secho, the third character we see, is the compiler of the Blue Cliff Record. Some of you know him as Sui Tao in the translations you have, the Chinese name. We've wandered with him many times before, so we don't need to talk too much about Secho. But we're taking a long, great walk with these two great students of the way, right? And while walking, we have Hofuku point with his hand and say, right here is the summit of Mystic Peak. So the word here used is myo-hocho. Myo means marvelous, ho means peak, and cho means top. So we're talking about beyond, the very pinnacle, the very rarefied place of practice. And it's often used as a Zen, as a potent metaphor for complete realization, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. It's a pointer, though, to suchness, to the heart of the way being right here, not elsewhere. But those are just ideas. Suchness in the sense that you can taste it, you can feel it, you can interact with it. And as a matter of fact, until you do those things, right, then you haven't appreciated it. It seems like a very astute observation, doesn't it? I think so, at first blush. But you have Chōkei coming back and responding with, indeed it is. What a pity. What an interesting sleight of hand. Yeah. He's giving with the one hand he's affirming, while at the same time cutting down. It's an ironic reflection on the very nature of realization. If you say you see it, you don't. If you say you've captured it, then you've missed it. You've often heard me talk with a man who stands on a beach looking out at the beautiful waves while he's away from his beautiful wife, and he says, boy, you feel the salt air. I can hear the crash of the waves. I'm going to bring some home. So he grabs a jar, and he captures the best part of it, puts it in his bag, and brings it home to his wife, who doesn't appreciate what she's got in that jar, right? It's just a bunch of smelly salt water. We have a tendency to try to conceptualize such a moment as awakening. Anytime we attempt to view awakening from the vantage point other than suchness is lost. This is it. This is it right here. Koan goes on with, Secho added a word saying, today, what is the purpose of traveling the mountains together with these fellows? So what is it? Why do we go through all the karmic conundrums of koans? To clarify something that can never be clarified through conceptual expression. Why bother with all the reading? Yeah? With all the bowing? The question is, can it be clarified at all? I want to make it clear that this is not a dismissive call to idleness, but rather a profound challenge. Can you actually walk with the ancients? Can you see past the poetry to what's being pointed to? Ultimately, can you embody it? Not just in the context of some koan, but in the context of the life that you have, not the one that you wish you had, but the one you're living right now. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah. Ultimately, I don't really need you to act out the koan. I'm actually asking you to show up for your life, to embody it there. So we may think that this is some sort of call to what is some notion of aimless spontaneity, where there's nothing to intend and no one to do any, and no intentions to be manifest, right? But the case points clearly to the futility of any idea of awakening as a goal or a target. But I would also suggest this is really a call to pull your head out of the dreamy world of your thoughts. Cherish your time. Cherish what is coming up. The only way to do this is by cultivating great intention and to place your attention with that intention, a great intention, then you should sit with this until your intention is truly clear. Truly clear. Then act. It's true, ultimately, that all of us are one gem. We often resemble facets. And each of those facets reflect that light a little bit differently. How do you manifest the great perfection of wisdom that's beyond knowing? Who are you? This isn't easy, I promise. Etc. relates hundreds of thousands of years hence. I don't say there are none. Just that there'll be few. There are more supposed practitioners of Zen now, because it's spread to so many continents, and yet very little real practice. Many people doing dances and prances with robes on, but very few people showing up for their life. Very few cherish their lives enough to spend them with intention and to recognize the wonder of what's at hand. All of us, of course, have very special circumstances and reasons why we're unique. I think many of us think that the practice doesn't work as the ancients posited it. We think, I'm special. I'm a different case. Well, yes, in one regard you are. But in another, you've never met the one who is special. Once you see that, there's no problem. Suzuki Roshi said, when we all walk together in the same way, following the same form, then we walk as our true selves. Completely unique. Yeah? The form takes care of the self-conscious mind. Then, walking is just walking. In other words, you're not trying to live in a way or walk in a way that makes us appear unique or important or different. We're simply following the same form, and then we're free to walk. And in that, who we really are shines through. But to do this, you really have to practice. You have to cultivate intention. You have to plan. You have to follow through. Without this, we never actually show up. The case ends with a solemn warning about missing this very important point. It says, later this dialogue between Hofuku and Chōkei was quoted to Chōkei. He said, if it hadn't been for Mr. Sun, or Secho, then you would have seen skulls covering the fields. When we cling to this notion of self, cling to this notion of somehow being separate, of our needs somehow being separate from this practice, you're dead already. Don't let your skull be one of them. Wake up to this life you're living. Meet that one. Set your intentions and actually manifest that in your activities. Sometimes it looks a lot like bowing. Sometimes it looks a lot like putting food in the food pantry. Sometimes it looks a lot like ending an argument with our wife, even when we think we know we're right, which I know is obviously never the case. Yeah. Otherwise, you're dead where you stand already. And I don't want that to be, the presence of your practice. So much magic, so much wonder happening here at the center. It's because of your continued practice. And I'm looking forward to all of these wonderful things we're doing. We have ordinations coming up. We have 2 retreats coming up in April. More Jukai ceremonies. Lots more service. Lots more bowing. But it's all dead activity until we really show up. And instead of bowing, we're the ones who are bowed.